Hello there, Star Wars toy fans. This is Jim. Thanks again for taking the time to stop by my channel. Well, you look here and you realize this is not Star Wars stuff. No, it isn't. But this is how I'm funding trying to complete my vintage Kenner collection. I'm about 6 pieces short. And for those of you that have scrolled through my previous videos, my most popular one, I think it has 14 plus thousand views on it, is an ideal slot car on a slotless track. Now, I'm a big slotless car guy, and I was into it when I was a child, had an AFX Speedster set, and then as an adult I really started to explore all the facets, then began doing some experimenting with things, creating hybrid track and cars, and tried all sorts of different combinations of chassis from ideal to matchbox on the AFX track. Kind of got into Tyco, really expanded there, and then began expanding my car collection by buying resin bodies and then creating resin bodies. For those of you that, again, you follow my videos, you know that I'm into 1/144 scale aircraft. So my real true love, though I love Star Wars and I love doing slot car stuff, it's really just building model kits. And so whether that means modifying a Kenner ship that's been pretty beat up, now I wouldn't modify a nice one, trust me, there's too much value in that. But, you know, one that's seen better days, or modifying a slot car or that kind of thing, or even building a model kit. That's really what I totally enjoy doing. So I'm selling off a bunch of my collection of slot car bodies in order to finance the more expensive portions. So backstory here, how I got this track. So I was at a swap meet last month helping a friend out. He's an old car guy, and I took a break and stopped by one of a fella's booths. An older gentleman, older meaning he was in his late 70s, 80s, looked like that to me. And on his table were 2 boxes of complete Tyco slotted car sets. And I asked him, so how much do you want for these? And he said, well, if you want these, you're going to have to take what's in my pickup. So inside his pickup, he had an old box 1965 Revell slot car set that was very, very incomplete, that I ended up giving to a friend who collects that type of thing, as well as a complete box of Tyco track, of miscellaneous track, and then a small box of 13 complete cars, complete chassis, body, that were in pristine condition, including one that was new old stock. And I asked him, how much do you want for it? He said, $50 for everything. Take it off my hands. And I'm like, done. Because I knew I could easily get 3 times, 4 times my money back just by selling stuff on eBay, which is what I did. And then I'll share with you some of the what I end up purchasing because of that here in the future videos. So without further ado, the purpose of this video is to show what you can do with slotless car chassis on a slotted track by just sticking a pin into the chassis. So before I get into that, let me share with you, for those of you that are still watching this video and you don't know about the various kinds of slotless chassis, what you can do. So first off, we'll talk about the 2 main proponents, or makers of slotless chassis, Tyco and Aurora. So I'm going to turn the camera down here. So this is what we call the Tyco command control chassis. And so notice here's the pickup shoes. They hinge from the front. And this is what we call the ring and pinion back here. And then we have our motor with the armature, and then the steering gear, which is clear up front. Now, the difference between slotless and slotted chassis is the fact that we have 2 gears right here instead of 1, and each one of these has clutch pins. And so what happens is when you either move the switch or change the wheel, like on the AFX controller, you end up changing the polarity of the armature. And I'll demonstrate that here in just a moment. Now here happens to be a command control chassis that I have modified. And so what I've done is I've stuck AFX pickup shoes on the front, just soldered them on. I have also reinforced the ring gears back here with thread. So I superglued thread on there just to give it strength. Now how this thing changes lanes happens to be with a little silicone gear up front. Call that a gear, it's really not a gear. And so when I end up moving or using this 9-volt battery on the pickup shoes. And then that thing should be changing lanes. I think I need to adjust that a little bit so that way it will move. But anyway, that's what happens. Now I'll demonstrate for you with the AFX, and that's a little bit more clear. So here we have an AFX chassis. It's called the Speed Steer. You'll see they all have these bumpers up front, because since we don't have a pin to keep them on the track actually has it's about that high guide rails on the outside, and so this basically hugs the walls of the track as it goes around. So this one happens to have a worm gear and this little pin, and this is what we call a B car. So the one I showed you before is an A car, meaning the pickup shoes are on the outside. See, it's got a B right there for B car. The B car, the pickup shoes are side by side. You'll see the two gears there. They have little clutch pins that engage. So this worm gear, what happens is when I put the 9-volt up, you'll see it spinning around. I change the polarity of it, and you'll notice that it just that little pin, because that worm gear spun it up, and now it's going to move to the right, to the left, right, back to the left, right, left. And that's pretty cool. You can change lanes with that. Now the limitations to that, of course, is that you try to get around a person around a curve, and unless they have dividers in the curves, which Aurora did not, it's pretty impossible to try to beat the guy if you're on the inside lane. So the other types of slotless chassis that were produced by Tyco. Tyco bought out the rights of Aurora. They went out of business in 1983. And so these are the TCR chassis from the late 80s, early 90s. We have the narrow pan chassis, which fits the narrow pan bodies of Tyco. You can see that there. And this is the wide pan chassis, which fits also some of the Tyco Pro, and that's what this Corvette is here. Now, before we get into this, two more chassis I want to show you. This happens to be the U-turn chassis right here. And the U-turn chassis has fixed wheels and allows the cars to basically spin around. So when we look clear at the back there, you'll see those little guide things way in the back. And that allows the car to kind of spin around the curves. And then the final one that we're going to show you, this is the I believe this is the Magnum 440, and this is just your regular slot car. So you know it's just one ring gear. All right, well, let's head down and we'll show you what can be done with a slotless chassis on the slotted track. Okay, so doing just some little demos here. Here is the U-turn car, and put that on the outside. See how that spins around? And these were a blast when I was a kid. My brother had a set, and it was cops against the A-Team van. Now I'm going to bring the car around again, and that's pretty much maxed out on speed. Now here's the Magnum 440. You'll see this is a much zippier chassis. However, the limitations to these are that they can only go one direction. If I reverse it, going to go backwards, which was great for the US 1 trucking sense, but not so great for this. Now you'll see why I modified the command control chassis. Now this is the one that hinges from the front. Notice it's not going anywhere. It's not gripping very well on the track, even with better tires, as well as when I get around a turn, there's nothing, because the pickup shoes need to hinge from the front. Now here's the one that I modified, and it zips around the track quite well. And that one needs a narrower pin. I ended up using a hub, wheel hub, for a pin because I didn't have one on hand. Now let's take a look at what the command or the TCR does. Okay, so we'll use the Corvette. This is the wide pan chassis. They zip right along. Look how much faster that is compared to the regular U-turn. And now we'll do the narrow pan. You have a little bit more control as you hit those U-turns. I just give a little bit of a sudden flick, whereas this one, I don't have to throttle it much at all. It'll just spin right around. Now here is the AFX, the Speedster. And Speedsters normally zip around the track pretty well, but that one's, the reason why this doesn't, I should also let you know, this happens to be a road blocker car. I forgot to mention that. So the road blocker had actually 3 pickup shoes there. I've taken one out, and it had a computer chip here. And so this would randomly change lanes. So what happened is it ran a series of gears up front, and that ran into a little tooth there, and then it would change lanes just on its own. The problem with the road blocker, though, is that it happened to oftentimes stall if the engine didn't go fast enough. So if you want a slower car, that would be great. Here is the actual Speedster one. And you'll see that's just as fast as a Tyco. The magnets aren't quite as good on it, though. Well, anyway, I hope you found this video entertaining. And if you want to check out some of my eBay stuff, just look up my name. Please give this a thumbs up if you found this video fun to watch. If you learned something, don't be afraid to leave some comments in the comment area. Take care, and we will see you on a future video.